to a communication breakdown. I had to bring this job forwards. When it's on show, visible is a word, visible is a word. Yeah, when it's on show, that's what 800 quid worth of MDF looks like. How about that for detail and a close-up? I don't want it to be boring, but it is pain at the end of the day. At least not making you watch it dry. Welcome back. My name's Matt. This is going to be a video about me making this unit. Should actually be making something else, but due to a communication breakdown, I had to bring this job forwards. So hence why it's on the van, ready to come off onto the rack. In fact, that's what 800 quid worth of MDF looks like. Yeah, basically I've brought pre-primed MDF on this. I'm not going to be using the Finster Hydrofugo for this job, which I'll get into a little bit later on in the video, which brings me on to the next point. I normally sort of film the whole process. I'm not going to film the whole process on this one because basically the videos are proven to be quite long. If you look at the design, there's not a lot of things to be glued and assembled, although there's probably more than you think just looking at it. So I'm just going to focus on some of the finer details, some of the finishing, and a lot more of the install. That's the plan anyway. Right, let's see how we go. And that's how I build cabinets, although actually it's not normally how I build them. Basically, normally the top and the bottom piece would go in between the side panel. It's kind of like a standard arrangement really with cabinets. I don't know why. I don't really know the real reason why. I just know that everyone does it and I do it. In the comments if you do know, obviously. If you genuinely know. But basically I haven't done it in this instance because I've recently on some of my jobs I've been putting this sort of contrasting plinth detail which shuts behind the doors, so the doors shut onto it, and I've either been contrasting it with the cabinets or contrasting it with the doors. I'll put some examples up on the screen. I've noticed there's a couple of things to it which kind of make it a pain, and I'm trying to refine those, and it's really only one, and that's that quite often you've got to notch the side panel of the cabinet for the plinth to work. So there's a lot to it. There's a lot of like things to consider. When you've got light drivers, you want those to be accessible, but you don't want the light spill if there's a little gap behind the face frame in there. So it's got to go behind. I'll put the dominoes on slots so that I can get it behind going at an angle. But I was just trying to eliminate one thing going forward, and that was having to notch the side panels. It's not worth it, because the reality is I've gone out of process making those, and I nearly kept making mistakes. I'm so used to cutting in betweens over on the panel saw. I'm so used to cutting those, less my two of my cabinet widths and stuff. I just kept nearly cocking up. Yeah, and the other detail that I've done on this is basically, as you can see, what we've got is we've got the side panel, the carcass material gets covered. That will get covered with a face frame. You can see I've pre-dominoed that ready for the face frame. The door will shut against this, so I've edge banded this. The door shuts against that. That will get sprayed. This sticks out. It's going to stick forward, probably just flush with the doors. I haven't decided yet. Rather than edge band this, I've done it in solid oak. Now I could have edge banded it, and I could have mitered the whole box over on the panel saw as one once I'd edge banded it, and you'd still have the mitered look, because that's really what I wanted to achieve, was like a mitered box sticking forward. Just thought it'd look a little bit nicer. However, I didn't want to do that, because the top I'm going to make I've got to make a solid oak top, which obviously I can jump on in a bit now. I've got that made for a template. It's got a certain sort of finish on it that basically does not really suit being edge banded. Doesn't really suit being applied to edge banding, which I'll go through later on in the video. It won't matter for the cabinet insides, because, you know, as long as they'll just all be the same tone as the top finish and the box finish. But there's actually a detail within the oak, like a sort of a distressing of the oak, which just I need to be on that front piece. I just feel like if I don't do that, it's just on that front lip. It doesn't have to be inside the cabinet, obviously. But if I don't do that, then it will look a bit cheap. It will look a bit like they don't go next to each other. The only thing I'm annoyed at is that solid oak hasn't really matched in well with the veneer. I always have this problem. It really looked like it was going to. Because I'm not veneering the boards myself, and I've got, you know, X amount of solid oak and X amount of boards, you try and select the best piece, and it just hasn't really come out. But I wasn't too bothered, because I've got to decorate it out anyway. We're actually applying rather than just a clear coat finish, we're applying a finish to this, so I can decorate that out in layers. I can get that sorted. I know I can. Just made my life a little bit harder, that's all, but that's what I do. Right, now I've got all that screwed to the wall on my little stage. That's all nice and level and straight, that wall. I can now pack out and start building all the spray components, which is what you're going to see now. Let's go. How about that for detail and a close up? Yeah, so we're pretty much done now. Obviously, I've got to take it all apart and spray it, but that's the dry assembly done. You see, I've dropped those shelves in, and how I do the shelves, you'll have seen I use the Festool LR32 system. There's a video up on my channel actually of how I use that system. I've missed off every other hole and put a bit of tape down there and marked that. That's simply because I just think holes every 32 mil is too much in this instance. When you've got it, you know, when you've got like a visible, when you've got like, when it's visual, when it's a visible, when it's on show, visible is a word, visible is a word. Yeah, when it's on show, when you've got a display unit on show, it's nice to have something a little bit different going on. So I actually do these holes slightly bigger and I put these banjo fittings in. The only problem is you can't put them all in pre-spraying. So I've just put a few in just to make sure it works. And then I bang these timber dowels in, which I'll treat the timber dowels all the same as the bottom piece of oak and the top piece of oak. It just looks nice. You don't really see it when it's on. I mean, because I've rebaited, you can see I've rebaited the underneath of the shelves to sit over the timber pegs. It's handy doing that. In this instance, you can't pull the shelves out. But if you've ever got like, I'll put some finished shots up of ones I've done. But if you've ever got, you know, shelves with loads of jars and stuff on, the last thing you want is some kiddie grabbing them and yanking the shelves off. That can't happen in that instance. So I am bulletproof. Yeah, and you can see I did the mitre folds on those. I've done some mitre folds on this channel before in veneer work, and I've only ever shown you me doing it the way where you take them all together and fold them over, which is kind of the mitre fold, I suppose, the standard way to do it. Only problem with that method is it's sometimes a bit hard in mouth. Like if anyone's ever done it, when you take the tape off at the end, because you're doing it all blind, you're like, oh, I hope there's not a gap. And every now and then there is a gap. Doesn't matter there's gaps on these because it's all getting filled and painted. But when you're doing veneer work or solid work, ideally you don't want a gap where you can't have a gap. So the second way I did it on the video, where I just pinned or clamped two boards together on the mitre and got them bang on square to each other, and then drop the piece in from the top and then either clamp that in or tape that down. You can manipulate it and make sure there's no gaps. That I prefer it that way really. And I could do it in this instance because I made the shelves longer and I pinned in between them and then I cut them all off on the panel saw. Obviously I could have done it with clamps as well, which is nice, just a glue and pin. So using all the clamps in the world while we're walking over here. Yeah, so what we've got push to open doors on this one, which kind of goes in with the brief really, of it's like a sort of a slab look, which is why I've used Spanilux pre-primed MDF. Now I normally use Finzer Hydrofugo. Some people out there, I know they're making furniture out of bare MDF and they're getting good finish. They're getting a good finish on the paint. It's not that hard to get a good finish on the paint on bare MDF, believe it or not, especially even the edges. I don't ever struggle with the edges, never have done. As long as you sand and prime them correctly, it's actually a bit of a doddle, the edges. It's the face that can be a pain. The Finzer Hydrofugo, the edges are so nice for mouldings, and they're so, the MDF accepts a screw so well. It's such a strong MDF. That's really where the purpose of the MDF is in my experience, and it's moisture resistant. So it's just a decent all-round good MDF. It does come with its problems though, and that's at the face. I think how they make it, I think they put some sort of waxy coat on, then recalibrate sand it, and you kind of end up with these slight imperfections on the face, which aren't normally a problem because you fill them out with a primer. But in this instance, I didn't want to pay the extra to have really decent like parts that could be turned well and paint well, just to then lose loads of time filling all the faces. So I've brought, because they're all slabs, I've just bought pre-primed. I could have just brought standard MDF, to be honest with you, because there's not really many mouldings or edges that you want to stay firm. But like I said, all this, although you can't see the screws, it's dominoed and pocket screwed together and it's all hidden. And then I actually screw the end panels in through there with a 16mm screw. There's plenty of fixings in there, obviously holding it together, and dominoes. And if you use standard MDF, it's just not strong enough. It delaminates quite easy, actually. It's quite surprising. Even some of the moisture resistant stuff delaminates. I just find Finzer just doesn't delaminate such a strong MDF. And if these doors were made up, if they were like shaker doors, I probably would, based on the last ones I've done with this MDF, I probably would just have done the Finzer, to be honest with you, even though I've got that big expanse on the back, or I've just mixed and matched MDFs. It is just a time saving really. Obviously I could have I could have edge banded these fronts. I know that might be what some people will say. I could have edge banded those, or I know some people are just sanding and buffing that out and spraying that. You'll see the seams. You know, you might not see them when you finish, but you'll see them in a year's time or a month's time. Bit of change of weather or whatnot, a bit of opening and shutting. You'll see the seams. You won't do if you edge band it, but it's just not a standard process for me to do the paintable edging. I have done it, but might have folded in, sort of done so much of it. I just thought, well, it's just one process then, just working with the MDF. Yeah, so what else have I got to do? I haven't included a little rebate in the back yet, because I am actually going to put an LED light tape on, but I'm going to do that now. I'm not going to film it. I'm either going to do it on the spindle moulder or the router table. I'm toying with using a different LED light tape on this one, just because I don't need it to be like the ones I normally use, which I might as well show you. I normally use these, and they're quite deep. They're about 11 mil deep, I think. I don't really want to use that because I'm domino into the face, and I want the rebate. I want the light tape to be right behind there. And you won't see it because we've got about a 13 mil overhang there, but I still want it to be right out of the way. So I bought these cob tapes. I don't really like the look of them, but I am going to be able to sink that in, and you won't, even if you come around here, you probably still won't see it. So I think I'm just going to go for that. But yeah, I'm still, we'll see when I install it, won't you? So that's the only other thing I haven't done. But essentially now that's ready. That's ready to be deassembled, and it can go up to the spray room. It just needs a final sand in places on the edges. Obviously, I know I've got to prime these edges, which is the downside. I have still got to do some priming, but I use the Edge 2 grey coat gun. It's got like a little function on it where you can get a really, really fine fine point on it. So I can just almost like draw those edges in with a spray gun, and a whole thing will have another little prime over the face anyway. So it's not the end of the world, but it just means, like I say, it's a hell of a saving on paint and filling. Yeah, I think anyway. And it's a really good finish, that board. It's like, almost looks like melamine at times when you look at it. It's so flat. Yeah, I mean, I've done a fair amount of spraying now, and yeah, that's, to me, getting that perfect with water base, because that's what I'm using, the Renner 1K stuff. That's 3 coats of primer getting it like that. So the way I see it is I've just saved myself 2 coats of primer. And something to chat about, innit? Right, cool. So yeah, that's it really. What I'll do now is I'll take all that apart, get on the spraying, and then the next bit will either be me talking about the prep of the spray, or we'll jump on the solid oak, I don't know. But that's the advantage of having the spray room upstairs. I can now disassemble that and I can jump on other bits. That's it. Yeah, look. When they're about to leave the nest, it gets a little bit chaotic, and they just come in, and before you know it, they're buzzing around your head. And then you get shit on. Right, pretty cool though. Right, I have actually been priming upstairs. So all the priming's taken care of. I know I said I was going to touch upon the spray, and I think I'm going to pick you up when I do the finished coat, which I'm waiting to hear back on. And then I'll talk about what hardness and stuff you can put in the primers and the sprayers and how I do it, and maybe show a little bit of spraying. I know that makes it a little bit more disjointed than like normal, which is already crazily disjointed, but that's just the way that this video is going to go. Then, talking about being disjointed, I'm now going to go on the oak tops. This is actually something I'm matching. This is from the customer's house. This is the end of the extendable dining room table. Full disclosure, I was just going to, and I'll show you the oak I picked up for this project. I was just going to glue 4 pieces of oak together, like an oak countertop all the way along, and you'd see the end grain, which there's nothing really wrong with that, as long as you're not staring at the end grain every time you come in, and it doesn't split. But the thing I'm matching is what we call breadboard ended. It has a piece running all the way down the edge, which kind of hides the end grain. Obviously you see the end grain of the breadboard, and you can't help that. But the idea of that being that it stops you seeing 2 things. It's supposed to keep it flat, but in reality, if you do a good enough job of selecting all your timber and gluing it together, it will stay flat. So the idea is this is to keep these flat and to hide the end grain. I now have had to replan, because I just thought last night, well, it's not in the same part of the room, but it is in the same room, so I really should match it. I'm already matching the finish, which I've been experimenting with, and we'll go through that in a bit. I don't really know how I'm going to do this, although I know how to breadboard bend, I've done it. I've got a certain pile of oak, it's just completely disrupted my flow. I've just made that last minute decision to make sure I breadboard end it. So I'll show you the oak. Yeah, it's not a big thing, it's just I'm cutting the oak a different way, aren't I? But I picked up these lengths of oak that I was going to edge your, you know, thickness and plane over there and, you know, whatnot. I'll probably have to straighten them up on the panel saw because it's quite hard running 3 meters through a planer and getting a completely flat edge. I can thickness them and get them right, but just getting a straight join for the glue lines can be quite hard at 3 meters. Anyway, I've got all the other oak as well on top, like leftover oak, and some of that I did buy as part of this batch. I've now got so much oak to play around with. The reality is, the way this has been made, it's almost like a veneer top, because it's the first time I've seen the insides of it, if you like. You can see it's actually almost like an engineered top. And then you've got this piece running this way. So these top pieces are probably like 4 or 5 mil thick. Then you've got a piece running this way. Then you've got like an engineered infill again. Then another piece sort of rebated in, which I guess is like the breadboard end, yeah. And there's probably dowels in there, like draw dowels. Or there's draw dowels on the edge, or dowels on the edge. That might just be where it's screwed through. I don't really know, but I don't really know how I'm going to do it yet. I've measured the overall size. I'm going to whack you in the tripod, and I'm just going to start doing it, and then I'll pick you up when I've formulated the plan, and then we can chat about it. How about that? Yeah. Believe it or not, I do normally plan a certain element of my videos, but you know what I say, best laid plans and all that. So yeah, wait you in the tripod. Let's go, let's get cutting some oak.
Release emotions and connect. As a part of 2014, very inspired by Kate Bush and 1970s space rock. It's still. Did you hear session review on live? Just there, and our second new music discovery of the day.
It's all happening on the other side of this.